Good morning, friends, and welcome once again to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. So, again, as always, a blessing to be here with every one of you. And welcome to everybody I didn't get a chance to say hello to. So glad that you are all here. Oh my, there's 25 of us already. That's wonderful. And so I'm going to ask my friend Kathy um, to read the preamble. Hold on one second, Kathy. Um, I am looking for it, and it is not on the screen. Let's see if I can. Are you able to see that, the preamble?
Um, I'm not seeing anything. Hold
You're
on.
not seeing anything. Okay, one moment,
Yeah.
please. Let me try this again.
Maybe we could all try it together and fill in
Okay,
the blanks.
here we go. Oh,
Uh,
there it is. I found it.
Okay, great.
Okay, there you go. It should be there.
Okay. AA's preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Kathy, thank you so much. And so, welcome once again, everybody, to the main object big book study. This meeting, just FYI, this meeting is being recorded, but it's audio only. So we're honoring the traditions this morning. And at this point, I'd like to ask everybody to join me in inviting God into this meeting this morning by joining with me and with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. As most of you already know, we are a line by line big book study. So we take our time for sure. And this morning proves that we are going to be on page one, near the bottom though. Uh, so and because this meeting is recorded, if you want to catch up or you want to review a meeting, I'm going to put the link to our YouTube page in the chat a little later on. And so, what we do is we go through the text and we separate or we categorize the text into five main categories. And I'll put those up on the screen so folks are, and you probably know all this by now, but and those categories are questions, directions, and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And the colors you see next to those match highlighter colors that I use just as reference to so that not only it helps me understand the text and what might be going on there, but more importantly, it helps me to share this information with other people and quite frankly, make sense of it. Because even yesterday, when I was prepping for today's meeting, as I was looking at the text and sort of making decisions, okay, is this a warning? Is this a direction? And it really helps me absorb the text in a bigger way and understand what Bill and I think our first 100 founders were looking for. So, anyway, and I'll put those in the chat a little later on if you need reminders for that. And the format also is I'm going to share on the text and hopefully get us through most of the next section of Bill's story. And I'll do that until 7 a.m. and then we'll open up the meeting for questions, discussions. If there's no questions or discussion, then we'll just keep reading. And once again, we are on page, whether it doesn't matter whether you're in the study edition or you're in the just the fourth edition. We are on page 1 at the bottom. And as I said, at the beginning, at the bottom paragraph there where it says 22 and a veteran of foreign wars. Now I'm going to do something a little different. And hopefully this will help you all. I'm going to put out 3 questions, and this is not, these are just questions for reflections, things to think about. And they relate to the text that we're going to read today. And the first question is, because this section, which I call, this is section 2 of Bill's story, I call this section Drive for Success, or the Drive for Success. And there are some themes that come up that I could really relate to my own sobriety, and hopefully you'll relate to yours, or my disease, I should say. And so the first question related to that is, early on, where did self-reliance actually work for me? We talk a lot about how self-reliance is, for a recovering alcoholic, is not always a great thing. It's not a good thing. And however, for a lot of us, and we see Bill and I could relate to this, at certain points in our lives early on, especially for me, self-reliance was, besides being like the way of the world, it ended up being a powerful tool. So think about that as we're reading. Where did self-reliance work for me? The second question is, how did self-reliance, rather than just alcohol, ultimately boomerang on you? Because Bill talks about that. Bill talks about how self-reliance came back on him. So think about that. And another thing we'll see in this section is related to this is, did you ever base your life or make decisions from fantasy rather than reality? And we're going to see that right away in the first paragraph. So just think about those questions, and hopefully folks will have something to share on that when we get a little further on. So jumping in, I'm at the bottom. I'm on what is, I guess, paragraph 4 on page 1. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. And remember last week Bill was talking about, he starts out his story talking about being an Army recruit and viewing the tombstone of the Hampshire Grenadier. And so now the war is over and he's going home at last. And I just leave that blank because I consider that history. Although the rest of the paragraph there I designate as a warning. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? As I looked deeper at that sentence, there were a couple things that jumped out at me. The first thing that jumped out at me was, I didn't want to assume that I fully understood the definition of fancied. So I went to my trusty 1939 dictionary, looked it up, and I'm glad I did. Because fancied, it doesn't, I took that to mean, when he said it fancied, I thought he meant like I thought of myself as a leader. It says the definition of fancied is imagined. So Bill imagined himself a leader. I imagined myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation. Bill imagined himself a leader because the other soldiers in his battery gave him some kind of special token. However, what I realized when I looked at that is he's saying, I imagined myself a leader not because I was recognized by the army or my own leaders as being especially adept or capable, but I was recognized by my peers. Which I'm not saying to be recognized by your peers is a bad thing, but it's sort of like saying all the other alcoholics in the meeting think I'm a great guy. I'm going to try to be the president of AA. So, my talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance. So let us just pause here for a second, and we're seeing two things in terms of the purpose of this section already. This drive for success. And I apologize because I should have also gave you all a heads up. This section continues, as I've marked it, continues to the end of that top paragraph on page 3. So it goes all the way through page 2, onto page 3, and it goes through that top paragraph. So the theme that we see emerging here is not just the early stages of progression, but it shows how early on self-reliance can be effective for us, can work for us to overcome deficiencies and mistakes, especially in I would say American culture, although I think it's probably worldwide, but especially in America, this notion of rugged self-reliance, it works for us, many alcoholics early on. But it ultimately, unlike many people, it turns against us. Thus, for us to survive as alcoholics, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, we have to actually abandon self-reliance. So I'm going to move on now. So Bill's creating this aspiration, these wishes and goals. However, the connection to reality and real accomplishment is tenuous at best. Top of page 2, I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. And I just leave that blank. That's history. Although you could say as well, I mean, I don't think it fits into a particular category, but here's a illustration of Bill using self-reliance to move his life forward. So it's working for him here in this instance. The drive for success was on. I'd prove to the world I was important. Now that sentence I have as a warning. And I have it as a warning because what I'm seeing in that sentence is something that I myself can relate to. The drive for success was on, not necessarily to provide for my family or to create security for myself or to find a place in the world or a purpose. It is to prove to the world I am important, which also indicates to me that Bill is dealing with this lingering feeling of not being important, of not being consequential. And we already saw that in the first section. So it's like an underlying imbalance. So he's got this drive for success, this self reliance, but it's being the underlying motivation for it is this underlying feeling of inadequacy, which I don't know about you, but this is something that I can definitely relate to, especially looking back on my early life. So that sentence is a warning. The next couple sentences I have just as history, so it's blank. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as, as well as law. I have that all as history, so it's blank. However, the rest of the paragraph I have in pink as um, warning. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. Just going to hold there for a second. So, got this self-reliance, this drive for success. But he also has the influence of his drinking and his alcoholism. However, he is able to keep moving forward in spite of his problems with drinking based on self-will and determination. So he's having these little problems with alcohol, but he's able to self-will his way through them and continue to move forward. And we'll see how that tendency can actually enhance our destruction or magnify our destruction. But I paused here also. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We are a page and a half into our primary part of the text, and this is the third warning that Bill has encountered about his drinking. But what does he do? We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceived their best projects when drunk, that most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. You could call that a lot of things. I mean, I might call it a rationalization. And actually, think about this. In the doctor's opinion, remember where it says the sensation is so elusive that many alcoholics lose the ability, I'm going to get the wording a little off, but lose the ability to differentiate the true from the false. With this interaction with his wife, do you see how Bill is illustrating that inability to discern the true from the false? And he's actually framing his drinking, which Lois is saying, hey, Bill, this might be a problem. And Bill is saying, no, not only is it not a problem, it's an asset. The inability to tell the true from the false. So, anyway, moving onward. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. I have that blank as history. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. And so I looked up Maelstrom, and um, a maelstrom, how it is defined in the 19, and I'll have this stuff in the chat, folks. Um, Maelstrom is a force that tends to um, absorb and destroy. Kathy, yes, did you have a question?
I don't know if it's appropriate, with our format here, but I knew, by the time I completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. Strikes me as now I'm adjusting my goals to suit my drinking.
Ooh, that's great. That's wonderful.
Okay.
So yeah, you could take that as a warning for sure. I didn't get that, but now that you mention it, it's sure, absolutely. So the inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. And that sentence, the sentence before the inviting maelstrom, I have as warning in pink. This next sentence, business and financial leaders were my heroes, I have as just history. So I have that as blank. Although I will say, I'm just going to put a little bit of an interpretation on that. Yes, it's history. However, Bill is imagining himself or hoping or aspiring to be one of these business and financial leaders. These are his heroes. This is who he's emulating. However, what we're seeing is that most likely Bill is quite different than these individuals. Out of, and the next sentence I have as a warning, and this sentence for me really encapsulates the theme of the whole this whole section, drive for success. Um, Out of this alloy, and an alloy is a mixture, like a chemical mixture, like they call, like I remember in science class when I was in high school, like aluminum was an alloy. It was a mixture of different things. So out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Definite warning. And not just a warning in a sort of a literary sense. When I think about that, when I think about Bill's drive for success, which is rooted in this underlying self reliance, is not only something that he obviously relates to, but it's something that I relate to. And the fact that when I encountered problems related to my drinking, what I tried to do is I did not surrender um, passively to the destruction of my drinking. I tried everything I could do to solve it. But how I solved it was how I had tried to solve every other problem up to that point in my life, which was through self reliance and determination. And I think that speaks to why Bill says this cut him to shreds. And I think it is also why, when you see they present the program to other people, such as Fred the accountant, they talk about the abandonment of lifelong beliefs. It's not just spiritual beliefs. I believe it's this notion of self reliance. John, yes, I see your hand.
Not to judge Bill, because I think I'm the same way. But Bill is trying to reveal to us in his own experience his pride and greed. Something to think about, and how that might be the beginning of the alcoholism that I experienced. Men of genius, Wall Street,
Mm.
making money. That's it. I mean, it's loud and clear to me. And like I said, I'm not judging Bill. He's trying to make a point using his own experience to the rest of us alcoholics. Thank you.
John, you raise that's a wonderful point. Thank you, because as you were sharing that, I'm thinking, here's an individual who now I think history would judge him as being responsible for one of the most altruistic movements ever to surface on this planet. And he is directly responsible today for saving millions of lives. And we can see how he didn't start out that way. Um, Living modest, and almost everything except the last sentence I have is just history, so it's blank. The last sentence I have is a warning, but I'll just read down to that. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap, rather unpopular. I rightly imagined they would someday have great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements. But my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. I think that last sentence, I have that as a warning, because I think Bill is actually being a little tongue in cheek there. Not that he is not being accurate, but I think what he's saying is, I discovered many more reasons through my own doing why people lose money rather than through his research. Meaning that he lost a lot of money. And what we see here, especially in the next paragraph, is that self-reliance and determination is actually serving him well. From the perspective of the values he is trying to live by at this time, I should say that. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle, the sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had some success at speculation, so we had a little money, but we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. That last sentence I just read there, I have that part as a warning. It's sort of a premonition of what is to come. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. I'm going to call an audible, folks, because I had that in as history, so I had it blank. What I'm going to now say is I'm reading it from the part where it says, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position. I'm going to, for the whole rest of the sentence, I'm going to have as warning. And why do I put that as a warning? Because that's a good thing. Look at that. I mean, this is talking $1939. We had a profit of several $1,000s for the year. Bill had genuine success, rooted in bucking the trend, going against consensus, and being self-determined. That worked for him. But as we will see, as he already has said, it's a boomerang that cuts him to ribbons. And that brings us to the end of section 3. And Nancy, I see your hand. I just want to put just a couple quick things out there, and that is just to again, for the section that we read, I want to bring back those first 3 questions I put out there early on. Where did self-reliance work for me? Where did it work for me? Not where did it eat me alive from day one, but where did it work for me? How did self-reliance, not just alcohol, ultimately boomerang on us and cut us to shreds, or cut you to shreds, or cut me to shreds? Did you ever base your life or make decisions from fantasy rather than reality? So with that, why don't we open it up and for questions, comments, thoughts, what have you. Nancy, I see your hand, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nancy. I'm an alcoholic. This whole paragraph, I have practically most of it underlined as warning. And thank you for going over it with us, David, because I can still do that. I'm still there. We try to solve every problem in our life by sheer self-reliance and self-determination. And all of these questions you asked can apply to any part of my life today. I think I get an idea up in my head and I'm going to do it. And I don't heed the warnings of all those around me. And I fantasize about how it's going to be. So, this is spot on. And I like that you looked up the word maelstrom, and that it means absorb and destroy. And my ideas do absorb and destroy. They have me in its grip. So thank you very much.
Nancy, thank you. And I do see Joe and Chris, I see you both. I just want to throw one more thing out there, very short, but I'm going to ask us, because what we've just read is an illustration of, I think, a key, another section from the book that's key that I need to sometimes connect to more lived experience. And that is, if we jump to page 51, we're going to jump ahead for a second, and the 3rd and 4th line of page 51, they're talking about we agnostics, and it's talking about people sharing this message and sharing their recovery. And it says, leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. And I mention that because here in these first few paragraphs that we have read, we see the precursors of how Bill, leaving aside the drink question, is showing why living is so unsatisfactory for him. He's laying the foundation of that through this illustration of self-will. Joe, please.
Yeah, good morning, David. And thank you so much, man, for your service and guiding us through this work. And you bring up so many emotions in me when you speak personally about this. And for me to speak personally about this, I spent my whole life really seeking approval. And I see that in Bill's story, right? I was looking for the outside to fix something that was really sore and insecure on the inside. And, Bill talks about Wall Street and men of genius and money and power and wanting the approval of others, but he wanted to be a leader. And this is basically all I wanted, like, to be brutally honest, with myself and with others. I wanted to be rich and famous. I had a resentment against celebrities because I thought that their life was so great and I needed to be that. My life sucked because I wasn't that person, and I see this in Bill's story. And thank you for bringing this out, because it really touched a point in me where I connected with Bill's story like I never did before. Thank you.
Oh, Joe, man, I so wish that I could say, when you're talking about your resentment against celebrities, I so wish I could say I have no idea what you're talking about. But unfortunately, I resonate with it, man. I'm right there with you. Chris, please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Yeah, there were a couple things. The self-reliance, that, and looking at that and seeing where it helped me, but what was coming to me is it helped me in feeding my ego. It helped me because I did feel so inadequate. So whatever it drove me to was driving me farther and farther away from connection with you, connection with my creator, and how vital to look at that as part of my fourth and then my fifth step. And then being able to go on and make those amends, because it's the connection that is so vital to healing. And gosh, I remember day trading at work, and I would justify it because I would say, well, if they gave me something to do, it was just always their fault, and there was always a justification, and then it was all being fueled by what I was ingesting. So anyway, thank you all, and for continued opportunities to wake up. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, John, please.
John, alcoholic. I'm reading about the alloy of drink and speculation. I don't think there's anything wrong with speculation. Bill was trying to use his own intelligence, his own faculties, his own will, taking chances out there, to try to make a better life for him and his wife. I have no problem with that. But the alloy also included drink. And I think I can relate to this, is that when drink gets into the mix, it messes with your mind, makes you think you're something bigger and better than you really are. That's pride, I guess, but it's a chemical thing in the brain that really doesn't belong with, it's not the truth anymore. I used to believe that, this is really hard for me to say, but I used to think that I could sit and walk with kings when I was drunk. Boy, I was somebody special. And that's what alcohol, that's the effect it had on my mind. So Bill's trying to tell us that alcohol mixed in with legitimate effort can end up as something that comes flying back at you, simply because alcohol has distorted your mind. That's all I have. Thanks.
John, thank you very much. And Sean, please.
Good morning, Sean, alcoholic. Thanks, David. And thank you. I think it was Kathy who pointed out I knew the law was not for me, as being kind of adjusting goals due to drinking. I remember thinking about going back and getting my MBA while my wife was going to night classes for law school. And the thought of just studying at night and putting in those hours and how that would interfere with my social life, my drinking and everything was, it was prohibitive, which is kind of sad. But then further down in the paragraph, he says, I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements. And what I thought was interesting was he acknowledges that he failed there. He doesn't displace the blame on the others, but what is it that the others are seeing in him that they're saying, you know what, you shouldn't have that additional responsibility. You don't necessarily deserve it. And he scoffs at it and says, we're going to go do it anyway. I just thought that was, foreboding a little bit about, what he's going to eventually really come to realize. It makes me think about things in my life where, people overlooked me for promotions or new opportunities and where I thought I totally deserved it. And maybe I really didn't. Thank you.
Sean, thank you so much. And Kathy, please.
So here's a confession for you. I went to college as a non-traditional student in my 30s, well, late 20s, and for the sole purpose that I could sit at a kitchen table or dinner table or whatever table with people who also had higher degrees, because I felt without that degree, I somehow was less than. And I thought that degree was going to fill that up. But I felt less than when I got the degree, when I got promotions, it just continued. So this need to do something to secure my position, whatever the heck that was, yet filled with inadequacy, continued and drove and drove. Literally put myself through night school so I could fit in. At the end of the day, for me, it's that hidden motivation that I didn't know existed, but that I pursued nevertheless, that still left me feeling empty, like you said, leaving the drink aside. Life was unsatisfactory. Thanks for letting me share.
Kathy, thank you. And we've come to just about the end of the meeting. And if you have any questions about the definitions that we used today or the questions for reflection, all of that now is in the chat. You can check that out. It'll also be in the description portion of the video when we post that. That'll probably be later today when that gets posted. And next week we will be moving on. So we actually made it a page and a half. I'm so thrilled. And the next section, section 3, what we're going to see is how Bill starts to double down on this self-reliance as not only does his financial life become more treacherous, but of course his drinking becomes more treacherous. And as trouble starts to percolate, he turns obviously not to God, but to self-reliance to solve his problems. So we'll see that. That section, by the way, is called Fierce Determination. And that section also goes about a page and a half to the bottom of page 4. So that's what we'll do next week. John, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, real quick. Bill talks about how he failed to persuade his friends to send him out. In other words, give him money to go somewhere. He probably demonstrated to them along the way many times, drunk or sober, in his head, he had some pretty strange ideas. And they, I don't believe, trusted him because of the perception they had of him, because of his drinking. And he displayed that probably many times to these people. And they said, no thanks, that's it. We're not going to invest in you. So he said, oh, hell with you then. That's a hell of an attitude, isn't it? The hell with everybody. I'm going to take my wife, I'm going to persuade her, we're going to get in this motorcycle, and we're going to take off. Well, he took his own ideas, soaked with alcohol, along with him, and he'll tell you the rest of the story. Thanks.
Terrific. Okay, we have come to the end. So thank you everybody for being here today. If you are in the mood for a meeting still, we have a Big Book Promises meeting at Good Morning Avalon, and I believe that information is in the chat as well, the number there. And if you would like a text reminder for this meeting that goes out every Saturday that has the Zoom link, and it also has the link to the audio archives, just leave me a chat message with your cell phone number and I will add you to that list. And at that, we are about 2 minutes over, so I want to thank you all for being here and ask you if you so choose to join me in closing out the meeting with the Lord's Prayer.